Welcome to part 2 with Phyllis. You will be excited for this if you have been into part 1. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, please just stop this and go back and listen because this is a follow-on. It's not isolated, so this is a follow-on from part 1. So please go back and listen to the conversation. There's so much wisdom in there and we absolutely loved it and we got a lot from it. So please go back, especially if you are a parent or someone who works with children and young people in some sort of a way. As with everything else, all of our resources are on our page. So if there's anything else that you want, you can go and have a wee look. And there's also videos explaining of how to use everything that we have on there. But today, part 2, welcoming Phyllis back. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to the conversation. We're excited for part 2. We got so much from you from part 1. So really excited for what is coming today. So part 1, just a little bit of an overview. Obviously, hopefully everyone has listened, but we were talking about developing connection with your child before you notice that there is a problem. So, and then the small things, maybe their interests, even if you're not interested at all, but they love Lego. Sitting with them, building Lego, forming connection there before there's an issue, so that whenever the bigger stuff comes, you have the foundation of relationship. So that was really what we talked about. A lot of other things, but that was one of the things. So today, what we're going to focus on is kind of how to have the conversation. So if you've been noticing that there's something going on with your child and differences in behaviour and you're thinking, okay, I need to actually address this. We did talk the last time about 2 different maybe parents, people who want to kind of storm in and or people who want to bury their heads in the sand. But what we want to do is you've decided that you're going to have the conversation, that it is needed, but you also don't want to storm in and demand that they tell you. But you also don't want to go in so awkwardly that they don't know what you're asking either, and kind of clunking around the conversation. So before we talk about how to maybe have the conversation, I would love for you to speak into, because you speak into this so well in a way that really is so helpful in understanding their brains, but also understanding what might be going on for parents and for myself. Could you explain, if we're going to have this conversation with our child, what is our child's world like? What are we speaking into? So we're telling them maybe things about social media, or we're saying to them things about their friends or about school. Do we understand that world at all? Do we understand what we're speaking into and what would be helpful? Could you maybe explain a little bit about their world and maybe how it was a bit different than ours? Just whatever you think is helpful.
Yes, absolutely. So the last comment you made there is a very important one. You know, our world might be nothing like theirs at this stage. Yeah. So what we experienced as children, as young people, teenagers, was a couple of generations ago. And you need to be respectful of that. However, you do have wisdom, and you can use that wisdom wisely. And that's what I would ask you to be aiming for. Sometimes it's good as a parent to plan in your own mind what a good outcome from any conversation would be for you. Okay. So where would you like to get to and be able to say, that worked out actually quite well? Oh, that's good. Because if you have a plan for a good outcome, you're more likely to land on it.
Oh, okay.
So again, if you're talking about one of the extremes of parent communication is storming in, that will put your brain in an emergency-oriented framework. Never mind your child's brain.
That's true, yeah.
So it is better if you have planned where you'd like the conversation to get to. Not the details of what might be in the middle of that, but what a good outcome would be. So think about that, plan for that. So in other words, even if your child starts to react about you butting your nose in, or, you know, talking about something you know nothing about, and you get some of that angst from them. If you know where you'd like to get to, you're more likely to stay a bit calmer during that bit of stormy water in the middle. Okay. So you asked me a question about the young person's brain, the young person's world. Brain development is fascinating, and there's lots of really good resources and ideas out there for us all to benefit from now. One of the lovely models that I think helps parents is Erik Erikson's psychosocial model. So there'll be a link to that in your resources. So make sure you have a look at that. You can situate your child then in these stages that Erikson highlights for us. One of the things that is helpful about that, Erikson tells us what might be helpful and unhelpful to a child at this particular stage.
Brilliant.
So I'd really encourage parents to be at least looking and a bit familiar with that. It's very accessible, but it's super informative. The child's brain is hugely imaginative.
Okay.
They've very little infrastructure. What we talk about up until the age of potentially 12 or 14 is a lack of activity in the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
Now that sounds like psychobabble 101. It's really not. And I would encourage parents even to Google that idea of a prefrontal cortex. Essentially, that part of our brain as adults gives us three brilliant functions: problem solving, risk assessment, and big picture thinking. So think about what I've just said. In other words, a young person's brain doesn't naturally access problem solving, risk assessment, and big picture thinking.
Yeah.
Leaving the child with an all or nothing idea.
Okay.
Which can be really scary for the child and can be really scary to hear for the adult. And so I want to normalize that a little bit. Your child is giving you extreme language at times because that's all they have.
Yeah.
You can actually speak in with some less extreme language and give your child something different and more positive to think about. So if something is absolutely the worst it can be for your child, Lucy told everybody that I'm smelly today. Now, Lucy could be 5, Lucy could be 15.
Yeah.
Lucy said that no one's ever going to talk to me again.
Yeah.
So again, how do we manage that with language that doesn't replicate what we've just heard? So you could say, oh, Lucy was on some form today. Let's think about some of the ideas and even facts around that. Go in, smell around your child. Are you smelly? Not sure. I think there might be something wrong with Lucy's nose.
Yeah.
You know, so you start with a wee bit of humour.
Yeah.
But then you can actually address, okay, so how are you feeling about what others might think of that? Get their language first before you go in with yours. Keep your assumptions to yourself and give your child an opportunity to actually describe what they're thinking. Because that can change your response then.
Yeah.
Even as a therapist, I'm not immune to that. So there are times when I hear a young client talking and I think, oh, yes, I know that. And I know what to say to that. But experience has taught me just to put my lips together and wait. And honestly, the number of times I've heard additional information from the child that makes a nonsense of what I was about to say, it's countless.
Yeah.
So I could recommend the wait and hear model rather than the jump in and talk model.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And we want to, because even that was one of the biggest bits of advice that I have taken into my own parenting, because, you know, if you see your child sad, it's like, what's wrong? Is it because of this? It must be because of this.
Good. Yeah.
And I find sometimes then my daughter was, and so whenever you had said that on your course, then I was like, right, I'm taking this in. I'm going to try this out and see how this works. And it was something completely different than what I ever would have said whenever I took time to pause. And it's, you just put your views of, well, in this situation, this is what I would be sad about, or this is probably what you're sad about.
Yep.
But actually, when we took time to listen to what she was coming out with, that was something completely different, you know, and which we never would have got. So that's such good advice, just the wait. And then to think of that whenever they're small, but think of that when they're older. Absolutely. You don't know what they're taking from that situation because they're not us.
Yes. So you talked a few minutes ago then about the world of a child. So think about the world of a teenager now in terms of how they communicate with each other. And lots of that is done through social media and screen texting in some form or other, or even images without words, Instagram and that sort of thing. So if we're honest as parents, that is a bit of a foreign world to us.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's good to understand that from your child's perspective and not just make your own assumptions or your own language around what that would mean for you if you were so immersed in it. Your personality and character can be very different from your child's, and your brain development is very different.
Okay.
So we don't know, and I say that unequivocally, I believe we don't know the world of a child because we didn't walk the same pathway with the same technology available to us.
Yeah.
So counterintuitively then, go slowly as they explain what they're involved in, what it means to them, what they're contributing, what they're hearing. I always think the aphorism, command respect. So the idea that if you demand respect, you're unlikely to get it. If you use your power as the adult, as the parent to say, I want you to tell me right now what's happening, you are unlikely to get the full story. So that's demanding respect. Commanding respect is having a connection in an ongoing way with your child, showing them how you're doing life, your ethical principles, your values. Let them see how you treat others.
Yeah.
Let them see how you interact with them when there's no angst and when there's loads of angst.
Yeah.
Right? So that they know more about who you are by the evidence that you give them. And that's more likely to keep a conduit of communication open. You can say honestly, I don't know what that's like. That wasn't the same when I was younger, and I'd really like to know what you are thinking about that.
Yeah.
Help me. Young people will respond very well if you show them what you don't know,
Okay.
rather than forcing on them what you think you know everything about.
Okay. So maybe saying, like, I can't imagine what that's like. Because even things that we might deem so as adults, you know, young people are crying or very upset because so-and-so didn't like my picture on Instagram.
Yes.
And we think, oh, for goodness sake, stop being so ridiculous. That
Yeah.
is just, in everything that's going on in the world, that is, why would that even come into your radar? And you try and say, who cares about that? That's not a big deal. But in their world, that means something, you know, so much more than a like on Instagram. So
Yeah.
if what I'm hearing correctly from you is, if we sit and we say, I can't imagine what that's like for you. Could you tell me what that feels like for you? Or could you tell me, instead of, like, we know as adults, or we think, well, that is not a big deal at all. But to them,
Yes.
it actually is. And unless we have that understanding, will we ever be able to fully get the big picture of what is going on for them? Because if we say, well, that's not a big deal, so what's actually going on?
Yeah.
There's so many layers under, because that's their wee world. And that's there where they're at. So that's really good advice. Thank you. So
even your language there is good. So their we world, their world is particular and confined.
yeah.
Right? Even the teenager who is out in, you know, big social circles with school and maybe community activities and an internet available to them, it is still a small world.
Yeah.
And you're talking there then about big picture thinking
Yeah.
that they don't have.
Yes.
So this Instagram post is their big picture thinking.
Ah, okay.
So we can say, you know, in 5 days, 10 days, neither of us will remember this.
yeah.
Keep that to yourself,
Yeah.
because that is their big picture for that day.
Yeah.
I'm saying as a parent, take comfort in what you know, that likely in 7 days this will be okay.
Yeah.
But if you give them that too quickly, it's like you're not listening and you don't understand.
Yeah.
So use that to give yourself some calm. But just as you said, ask them to help you understand what that's like for them. What are they afraid of? What else have they already heard? What have they seen in their past about, has this happened to anyone else? But very importantly, when you have conversations like this, it's good to bring those conversations to an end.
Okay.
If you go on and on, you'll saturate the young brain with too much information, too much disconnection, because you're telling them things that make no sense to them. So again, counterintuitively, bring that to an end. Like I would say, a good 5 or 7 minute conversation about that is plenty at any one time.
Okay.
So you can be then leading the conversation in another way.
Okay.
That brings diversity to the young brain. It calms them down. It takes away that idea of danger and imminent threat. If you talk about, oh, that reminds me, you were saying you wanted that thing for tea. I got that the other day. Will we go and maybe Google a recipe for it? Like that is a very unexpected change in direction for a young brain that is freaking out about this Instagram post.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage parents by saying that's you giving your child something much more positive to think about. That's not you ignoring your child.
Okay.
So you mentioned then the either extreme, you're jumping in or you're sticking your head in the sand as a parent. So to move them on to another conversation about what's for tea is not you sticking your head in the sand.
Yeah.
If you've had this conversation about, I'd really like to understand what you're thinking.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. To move on then shows them this is not the only thing in their world.
Yeah.
Things at home are good. You can remind them about something that you're going to do at the weekend. You can remind them of other relationships that you know in their world is sound.
Yeah.
Young people need to be taken back from this precipice of threat and danger
Okay.
and reminded about the things that are still very much okay in their world.
That's really good. That's great. Really, really good. And if you're saying that, so just going back to this being like social media being their world, so things like coming in and saying, well, I'm just going to take your phone, that's you off social media, that's it. How would that react if that's something that a parent's already given? So if the child, so it's a different conversation, should they have it or not, or should they have a phone or not? That's a different conversation. But if they have a phone, they are actively in social media, but it's upsetting them to say, well, if it's only, I'm just taking it away, right? You're not having it anymore, that's it. Or you're not talking to them anymore, I'm going to take your phone, you're not in those WhatsApp groups anymore. If they've been actively involved, if that is then their wee world. So as parents, you can understand because it's like, well, this is the thing troubling you.
Yes.
It's not a big deal. I'll just take the phone and then there we go. It's all gone and there's no more issues anymore. But if what you're saying is that is the big thing in their world, what's actually helpful for a parent to do in that scenario if it is something about social media?
So again, those are good questions. So I start by saying removing a phone is always an option for a parent. They're likely paying for the phone. So I'm never going to rule that out as an outcome. But I think there is a structured way of getting to that point that keeps the child with you for longer.
Okay.
So you start with a, tell me what's happening, tell me where you're hearing that, tell me who's involved in that. Can you give me a wee idea of how you're feeling about that? What do you think a good solution would be? Again, you're not giving all the power to your child. You still have this option coming. But if you can collaborate with them
Okay.
and give them an opportunity to help you understand some of the things they're thinking about this, then you can use more constructive language that is child-centered. Because if you say as a parent, oh, I hear that social media is giving you all of this angst, give me that. You're not giving them an opportunity to tell you what's actually good about their social media.
Yeah.
interactions.
Yeah.
You're only hearing the thing that's giving you the issue as the parent, and your blanket withdrawal can actually take away some of their good support as young people.
Yeah.
So again, it's a very counterintuitive thing that I'm saying, and I get that. I'm just wanting objectively to say to parents, jumping in without first understanding the magnitude and the way in which your child is understanding this distances you from them.
Yeah, I suppose bringing them on the journey of, okay, what might be going on? Okay, so they haven't liked your Instagram post. Bring me on the journey that, okay, do we think that's helpful? Or, and then for, like, I love your word collaboration, because to get to the end, then it's like, oh, well, maybe actually deleting Instagram or maybe not having that is actually the best thing for you, and them to come to that conclusion with you and understand, rather than you go in, take it away, and you're the bad guy. You know, if a parent just comes in, takes away social media, it's like, oh, my mum and dad took this away from me. I'm raging, it was fine, I was okay. Whereas if you go on the journey and the kid realizes for themselves, oh, that's maybe not normal. This is my world and this seems normal to me.
Yeah.
But actually maybe this isn't the most helpful thing to me. If you take time, as you're saying, collaborate with them and go on the journey. It's even like with my 4-year-old, I tell her, put on those clothes, and she's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Whereas we collaborate and go on a journey together and think, would you like this one or this one?
Good.
Or maybe it's cold outside, so we're not going to wear the Elsa dress all the time. We might need a coat, things like that. And when we collaborate together and try and go on it, instead of just kind of dictating your authority.
Absolutely.
Obviously kids don't have, everywhere they're kind of being controlled. So
that's right.
And then as a teenager, I suppose, not being a parent of a teenager, but you get a wee bit of freedom and you kind of grasp it, especially if you're given a phone, you get a wee bit, and then to come in and have that taken away, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be seen as the bad guy as a parent, because you are doing it out of love and of help. And, so taking them on journey. I love what you're saying about collaboration.
So you can turn yourself into the bad guy if you use definitive, unequivocal language. So one of the wee words that you used a few minutes ago was suggesting that we might delete Instagram. That's very extreme. So I would be thinking about an experiment. That's a lovely word for a child, a teenager. Let's experiment with that. Let's not do that for a day.
Yeah.
Because even if you say a week,
like
that's too much. Let's experiment with what that would be like to not do for a day. And you and I will check in with each other because we're in this experiment together. We're not deleting it. So that's what I'm saying. The word delete is the extreme language that the child themselves is on the lookout for. Oh, right, you just are going to prevent me from doing all of these other things that I really like.
Okay.
Let's just experiment with a pause. So pause is better than delete. So again, you still have that option as a parent to remove. So you could remove the whole phone, keep it in a drawer for a day, but that's an experiment. And then you need to help your child with what they will do instead of looking at their screen. So you might actually have to experiment with in real life conversations. And that can be a fun conversation at home. Though we've almost forgotten how to do that. How would we go about that? So we're taking them on a journey in increments rather than just jumping in and saying, I see the problem, I see the solution, it's got nothing to do with you, I'm taking over.
It's great. Really good. We've just coming to the end of our time, but just if I can, so for parents who are struggling with the idea at the minute, their kids are at a certain age and everyone else in their class has got a phone. And their kid is saying, I'm the only one who doesn't have a phone. And the parent doesn't necessarily want to give a phone or doesn't really know. But they feel a pressure. I don't want my child to be the only one not with it. What outweighs? I know what lies on the phone and I don't necessarily want my child to have one, but I don't also want them to be left out. Have you any advice to speak into that? It's a hard, because they haven't yet got the phone, and so right now is kind of a hard wrestling with the best thing to do for your child. Or maybe some people are thinking, oh, by the time they get to this age, of course they'd have a phone. Maybe there's something to stop and to pause and to maybe consider what that might actually be like. Have you any advice around that? We're not looking if you've given your child a phone.
Yeah.
There's no blame here. There's
Good.
these are, as parents, these are questions we are all going through all the time. And there's stuff that we've done as parents that you look back and you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. But just speak a little bit of wisdom. Have you anything for parents to just think about before they maybe hand that over or anything like that?
So again, I think parents ultimately, especially with young children, have the right to control what their child is having access to. However, we do have to think about the social development aspect of you thinking that everyone has something that's of benefit to them and it's being withheld from you. That's, again, a huge thing in a child's mind.
Yeah.
So rather than just giving in, as the phrase goes, talk to them about what it's like for them to feel they're being left out.
Yeah.
Normalize the angst of that, and then balance that with the other things that they are absolutely not being left out of. Social interaction at school, all of the access to relationships and opportunities that are not phone related. So it's good, again, to give your child a broader idea of life than just my life will start well when I get my phone, right? Teach your children to be social and communicative. Show them good vocabulary. Show them interesting things to talk about so that they're able to take part in real life conversations in a way that doesn't always lead them back to, I need a phone, engage in activities with your child so that they can engage with activities with others, rather than just showing them that you're on the phone all of the time, that you'll speak to them in a wee minute when you send this message.
Yeah.
We need to be modelling a broader way of communicating and being with others ourselves before we expect our child to believe that either reduced or non-existent phone use is life-changing.
Yeah.
So that's for the very young child or the child coming near maybe the end of primary school. Once your child has a phone, it's still of benefit for you to be checking in with them, building trust with them, for them to be at least a little open with you about what they're looking at and what they're doing. I can recommend then an idea when you're beginning your child's phone use, that one of the things you build into that conversation is, in a regular way, you will be checking in on that phone. You will have access to that phone, and together you'll look at what's been going on the phone.
Okay.
That's actually a good way to start phone use for your child.
Okay.
And then you can navigate that as your child gets older, but still have some sort of expectation from your child that mom or dad will look at the phone.
Yeah.
If you have not had that in place and suddenly you say, by the way, I need your phone every fourth day because I'm going to be looking at all your history, that's a trickier conversation to have. So build that in at the beginning.
Okay.
If you haven't been doing that, it's never too late to start conversations with what's happening on your phone.
Yeah.
What's it meaning to you? What are you looking at? What are the benefits? Start with the benefits rather than going for the problems.
Okay.
And that's a gentle way in to then some of these trickier conversations that you want then to have your child's honesty in what's tricky about their phone use.
It's great. Thank you so much. And I love that, just even teaching kids there's a life beyond your phone.
Absolutely.
They don't have to, even though everyone else is doing it. Is that the way that we want to go through life? Just because everyone else has it or everyone else is doing it, is that actually the best way?
Yeah.
So thank you. That's really, really good. Thank you. So that is the end of today's conversation. We hope that you have enjoyed this, and we hope that you've got a lot out of it. If you want to, go on to our website and get the rest of our resources. There's lots of videos telling you how to use our website, how to use the resources, and we hope that you get a lot from it. Phyllis talked about a link, and that will be in the notes about that model to really help you. So have a look at that, see where your child fits on that, And yeah, we hope this is helpful for you.